for being here, and thank you for your public service. Greatly appreciate it. I served for almost 6 years in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles, worked very closely with the DEA when I did. In fact, worked on bringing to justice one of the people involved in the kidnap, torture, murder of Enrique Camarena. So I was interested to see the video at the outset of this hearing and thrilled when I learned of Caro Quintero's extradition to the United States. Mr. Allen, I want to ask you a couple questions about your work in L.A. I'm grateful for all the efforts to stop the scourge of fentanyl and the smuggling in this country, which has killed so many Americans. My questions go to the fact that I want to see that focus continue, and I don't want these questions to be perceived as a criticism of you. You're following the instructions you're getting from headquarters. But I am concerned, and for the reason that Senator Padilla alluded to the degree that your resources are diverted to immigration operations against nonviolent immigrants, against farm workers or garment workers or restaurant workers, I am worried about diverting the focus away from interdicting fentanyl and going after these cartels. So let me ask you, how many field agents do you have in LA?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm your independent political analyst, and here we break down the country's biggest political flashpoints with clarity, context, and a nonpartisan lens. No spin, just facts, thoughtful reactions, and nuanced insight. Now, today we're diving into a particularly tense exchange from a recent congressional hearing that touched on two deeply complex and emotionally charged issues: drug enforcement and immigration policy. Let's unpack what happened, what was said, and what it really means for public safety, resource allocation, and political transparency. Before we get into the meat of the exchange, let's set the stage.
So approximately 200.
And of the 200 field agents in LA, how many of them have, in the last 150 days, worked on immigration enforcement?
That's a tough question to answer, sir, just because it's such an ebb and flow. It's not like we have people permanently assigned to just work immigration enforcement. Because, as I said before, we're really primarily focused on continuing our work in drug enforcement, and the crossovers that fall into place with illegal immigration. I mean, that's where we
give us your best ballpark. Have a third of them been assigned at least temporarily, or half of them, or more? Is everyone participating to some degree?
I would say at any one time, that's a decent estimate. But again,
sorry, which estimate? About 30%?
At any one time, not necessarily at one time, but at any given time. There could be 5%, there could be 2%, there could be 30%. It just depends on what's going on that day and what type of support we can offer.
But give us some sense. I want to know what kind of call on your resources this is.
Well, I can actually give you a couple of good examples of things we've done recently.
I'm really not looking for examples. I'm looking for how much your workforce is being diverted to immigration enforcement and away from things that they were doing previously.
Well, specifically immigration enforcement only, that's not what we're focused on. It's just not, sir.
Okay, so how many of the 200 agents have worked on immigration enforcement?
At any given time, anybody could.
No, just overall. Have all 200 been called away at some point to work on immigration enforcement?
No, sir.
Okay. So how many have?
I really would have a hard time giving you an answer on that, sir.
You're running the office.
I am, yes.
And you're having to make decisions about allocating resources.
Yes, sir.
And you've got investigations to pursue that were ongoing at the time of the administration. And you're having to take agents off of one thing to put them on another. I know how strapped the resources were even before this administration. Yeah. So you may not want to be precise here, but we need some sense of what kind of resources are being diverted here. So what percentage of your agents would you say, what's your best estimate, what percentage have been called to do immigration enforcement? What percentage of the 200 have at some point in the last 150 days been called away to work on an immigration enforcement action?
Sir, the reason I'm having a hard time answering the question is because we work immigration enforcement as it relates to narcotics enforcement. So the two are intimately combined, and that's what our agents are doing.
Okay. Well, for instance, you know what I'm asking you. With all due respect, you know what I'm asking you. So, what percentage of your agents have been called away to work on immigration raids? That is a departure from what you were doing before 150 days ago.
Sir, my people do not do strictly immigration raids.
What percentage of your agents have worked on immigration enforcement in the last 150 days? Can you give me an estimate?
Again, it's not just immigration enforcement, sir. So I have a really hard time.
You clearly don't want to answer the question, Mr. Allen, and this is part of the problem. And that is, we are devoting, by some estimates in the FBI, 45% of our agents in major cities, it's a public report, to immigration enforcement actions that are 90% of which going after nonviolent offenders. You're taking them away from somewhere. You're taking them away from somewhere. And you clearly don't want to tell us how much you're taking them away or how much work they're doing on this and what other enforcement actions, what other interdiction they might be pulled away from. But we need answers. Mr. Perez, are the estimates accurate that 45% of agents in major cities are being called on to work on immigration now? Is that accurate?
No, sir, I would say that's not entirely accurate. I think that maybe comes from some data that looked at
So what is the accurate percentage?
So nationally, sir, I don't have an exact percentage. I would say it's probably, it ebbs and flows. It could be between 5 to 10%. But again, that's been a temporary surge. We're realigning, we're surging now towards potential terrorism threats.
And the 5 to 10% that are being called away to work on immigration, what were they working on previously?
It varies, sir, by office. It depends. But we have a history in the FBI, sir, of surging resources towards terrorism or cyber attacks or cartels. So those are decisions made by our field offices to potentially pull someone off of an assignment. But I would say that's common, sir. In the 100+ years in the FBI, we surge resources, we realign resources for potential threats.
Well, I don't think there's anything common about the scope of what you're being called upon to do with these immigration enforcement actions. But I know my time has expired, and I yield the mic to Senator Britt.
Thank you very much. On the note that we were just talking about, the stuff that I have read is that actually the seizures of drugs have...
The hearing featured testimony from DEA and FBI officials, particularly focusing on operations in Los Angeles, where fentanyl trafficking remains a deadly epidemic. One of the speakers, a former U.S. attorney, opened by expressing his appreciation for law enforcement work and revisited a deeply personal case, the murder of DEA agent Enrique Kiki Camarena. This case, for many, symbolizes the dangerous and ongoing war against drug cartels. So the speaker's concern is not just theoretical. It's rooted in real-world experience and legacy. But here's where it gets tense. The heart of the debate revolved around this central question. To what extent are federal law enforcement agents, particularly DEA and FBI, being pulled away from drug enforcement to assist in immigration operations, particularly targeting nonviolent offenders? Mr. Allen, a DEA official based in L.A., stated there are about 200 agents in the region. When asked how many of them have worked on immigration enforcement in the last 150 days, he couldn't or wouldn't give a clear answer. Now, from a political analyst lens, this is important for a couple reasons. First, resource transparency is critical. When federal agencies face tight budgets and overwhelming tasks, such as tackling fentanyl trafficking or organized crime, understanding how personnel are being used isn't just good management, it's public accountability. Second, the line of questioning itself wasn't necessarily accusatory, at least not at first. The speaker clarified that he wasn't blaming the local DEA office, but rather raising concern about directives possibly coming from higher up. That's a key nuance, and it's where things started to get frustrating. Mr. Allen said that immigration enforcement and drug enforcement often overlap, particularly when drug smugglers cross the border. That's fair, the intersection is real. But when repeatedly asked for an estimate, even a ballpark figure of how many agents have been pulled away specifically for immigration enforcement, he avoided giving a straight answer. Now, as a neutral observer, I'll say this. On one hand, it's true that law enforcement operations aren't always cleanly categorized. On the other, when a member of Congress or the public asks for a basic breakdown of resource allocation, vague generalities aren't good enough. Even if the numbers fluctuate, saying we don't track that or it ebbs and flows doesn't inspire public confidence. Transparency is essential, especially when we're dealing with issues as serious as fentanyl and immigration enforcement. Next, the discussion turned to Mr. Perez of the FBI. He was asked about a public report claiming that up to 45% of FBI agents in major cities were being diverted to immigration enforcement, and that 90% of those actions targeted nonviolent individuals. Perez pushed back, saying those numbers were likely exaggerated, and that the actual figure was closer to 5 to 10%. And even then, that was during a temporary surge in response to shifting threats. He also noted that the FBI routinely reallocates resources to cyber attacks, terrorism, cartels, and so on. This is true. Agencies like the FBI have long relied on a flexible task force model, which lets them shift agents depending on the priority of the moment. But the pushback from the original speaker is also valid. He questioned whether this level of immigration focus is truly comparable to past surges. His concern? That what used to be temporary shifts might now be permanent reassignments, with serious implications for other enforcement priorities. Let's zoom out for a second. This conversation isn't just about immigration, or fentanyl, or even interagency coordination. At its core, it's about trade-offs. Every agent working on immigration enforcement is an agent not working on drug trafficking, human trafficking, cybercrime, or violent gangs. And here's where it gets even trickier. Many of the individuals being targeted in these immigration actions are nonviolent restaurant workers, farm laborers, garment workers. That's not just a moral question. It's a strategic one. If your resources are finite, should they be focused on the biggest threats like cartel leaders and fentanyl traffickers, or spread across lower-risk immigration cases? This is not a left versus right question. This is a question of strategic law enforcement prioritization. So here's my take, as someone who isn't here to play partisan games. The speaker raised legitimate oversight questions about how law enforcement resources are being used. Mr. Allen's evasive answers did not help instill confidence, even if the real-world operations are complex. Mr. Perez's response was more grounded, but still lacked clear, empirical data. Ultimately, this exchange reflects a broader tension in American policy right now. The push-pull between border control and criminal justice, between political mandates and operational reality. We're asking a limited pool of agents to wear too many hats, and we're not tracking the impact with enough rigor. So, what do you think? Should law enforcement agencies be more transparent about how many agents are being used for immigration enforcement? Is it reasonable to reassign drug agents to border operations when fentanyl deaths are skyrocketing? Are lawmakers right to demand these numbers, or are they oversimplifying a complicated operational reality? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep it respectful, factual, and focus on policy, not politics. If you found this analysis helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel grow and supports more honest, independent political analysis. Until next time, stay informed, stay thoughtful, and stay engaged.